Oh, good, good. Glad you enjoyed that. Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, 30 seconds, everybody here. All right. Good morning, everyone. At this time, I'd like to call our Budget and Finance Committee meeting for Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. At this time, I'd like to introduce my committee staff. Oh, is that, wow, what's that? Okay, replay. I'd like to introduce my committee staff, Trustee Aide Pohai Ryan and Secretary Summer Soares, along with our Board of Trustee Council, Naivi Wardeman. At this time, I'd like to have Pohai do a roll call, please.
Trustee Ahuna.
Aye.
Trustee Akaka. Trustee Akina. Trustee Galuteria. Trustee Kahele. Trustee Lindsay. Trustee Souza. Vice Chair Wahe'e. And Chair Alapa.
Present.
All board members are present.
Right, mahalo Pohai. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 11:06 a.m. And just a friendly reminder to our trustees to turn on your microphone when you speak so that it records on our video recording for our meeting. Otherwise, it'll be inaudible. As for public testimonies, the following rules apply so that we are all respectful of everyone wanting to participate today. Public testimony should be limited to matters listed on the meeting agenda and will occur prior to any listed items, conclusion, or vote. If you begin to address other issues not on today's meeting agenda, the BF chair will call you out of order and direct you to limit your testimonies to items listed only on the agenda. Testifiers' mics will be unmuted when it is your turn to testify. If you're not audible, you will be muted and the next testifier will be called. Oral testimony online will be limited to 5 minutes. If so, we can give you a 4 minutes and 30 seconds heads up so that you will know that you've got 30 seconds to complete your testimony. Your mic will be automatically muted once you have completed your testimony. Please log off after testifying. Just a little heads up here. Pohai, do we have any testifiers today?
Yes, we have one online, Jermaine Meyer.
Okay, we will call upon her as soon as we call upon our kapuhana. So at this time, I'd like to bring on our kapuhana, Stacy Ferreira. Did I say that right? Ferreira. To announce the administrative staff joining us this morning.
Mahalo, Chair, Vice Chair, trustees joining us today in person and online. We have Chief Operating Officer Kehau Pu'u, Chief Financial Officer Ramona Hink, Endowment Director Ryan Lee, Financial Analyst Grace Chen, Interim Corporation Counsel Everett Ota, Interim Senior Legal Counsel Nichi Ozawa, Director of Communications Bill Brennan, IT Systems Engineer and Administrator Daniel Santos, and Arlene Aguinaldo. Mahalo.
Mahalo, kapuhana. At this time, we're on to item 2, and we're going to defer the approval of the March 2025 BF committee meeting minutes. So we're going to move on to number 3. There is no old business. And at this time, though, on the agenda, we'd like to move to item 4, and being that just so you know, there are no action items to be discussed today. So we're going to proceed with our presentation this morning. A presentation will be done by our Administration on Office of Hawaiian Affairs for the Ho'akoakoa Lahui Event Sponsorship Program Guidelines and Procedures. At this time, I'd like to call upon Kapunui Kehau Pu'u to share with us the presentation for item A. Yes, I'll call upon her when she's done with her presentation. Go ahead.
Kalamai aloha kakahiaka, Chair Alapa, Vice Chair Waihe'e, and trustees. Mahalo nui for this opportunity to provide an overview of Ho'akoakoa Lahui. Given that we have now officially kicked off the program. So I was here on January 8th where I did a brief overview, But now that we have really officially kicked off, especially with going live on our website with Ho'akuakua, e-blast, and social media blast, the word is out that we have a sponsorships program. I would say Maupopo Kalahui, they know, and we've been just getting we've been getting an influx of applications, which is why you folks have been seeing an increase in action items at board meetings. So I think this is a good time to ho'imai and provide this overview. I'm happy to take questions. My deck is kind of long, but I'm going to be as concise as I can throughout. I'm happy to take questions as I go through the presentation. Also, I did receive some questions and concerns, right, given the increase and some of the action items that have been coming up. So I'm going to also make an effort to address these questions and concerns throughout the presentation. All right. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit of background. And real quick, you folks have in front of you the deck that we're going to see today. You also have our last solicitation for OHA Hui grant, which I refer to on this slide. And real quick, I want to change my view here so that I can actually see the presentation on this laptop. Oh, okay. Okay, never mind then. So real quick, building understanding of why we have what is now Ho'akuakua Lahui. So quick background, previously OHA has carried two processes or two grants with two separate processes for essentially the same thing, to support events with some kind of benefit to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And so what we had were and so we have a comparison chart here. We had AHA Hui grants, and then we had sponsorships. And included in those sponsorships are legacy sponsorships, BOT sponsorships, and rural-based community sponsorships, which never actually kicked off in this fiscal year. So both grant programs, again, but with both having separate processes. So on the AHA Hui side, again, very similar intent and purposes, funding to support events aligned to our strategic plan, provide significant benefits to our people, as well as to OHA in terms of engagement and PR. On the other side, as stated in our budget, our fiscal year 24-25 budget includes payments made to orgs in support of an activity or event in exchange for advertising or in order to create goodwill in the community. Again, and so to the next level, funding amounts. So with AHA Hui grants, in the last solicitation, which you folks have in front of you, the largest award that was given was $10,000. So that was the max in this last solicitation. Whereas on the sponsorship side, our highest funded event was at $25,000. When I first came into the organization and started, a lot of sponsorships were being funded at $5,000. A lot of our legacy sponsorships were sponsored at $15,000. And then the largest difference in both was the process. So for AHA Hui, these were treated like our community grants. And these are like our six-figure dollar types of grants. But they had a very similar process, the AHA Hui grants. So for a community event grant, $10,000 max, they had to undergo a very rigorous process, because when we are awarding six-figure dollar grants, of course, we want to have a rigorous process. But so AHA Hui, that was the process for those grants. Whereas on the sponsorship side, we had an application. I'm going to just characterize it as a fairly simple application where we required a W-9. In doing some homework, I found that in the past, we didn't always require the application. Some organizations will send a packet with information and their request letter. And so those were used also in the past. I saw that, I took a look at the CLA audit that was done back in 2019, and things like that were called out as well. So what we see here is, again, two processes that are supporting and funding essentially the same thing. And so what our purpose, next slide, please. And so what we really wanted to do desired outcome is create a, next slide, is really create a fair and equitable process and opportunity for all nonprofits to acquire funding for their events that are strongly aligned to OHA's mission, our foundations, our outcomes, that does have a benefit. It doesn't say that here, but does have a benefit for OHA, and definitely serves community. So instead of having these, again, two separate processes, we wanted to bring those together, consolidate them, and have one. And so we have Ho'akuakua Lahui Event Sponsorship Program. Next slide, please. Oh, my ha'aluluwau. I get it out. Okay. So Ho'akuakua Lahui is a beautiful inoa. It means to assemble the lahui together. Our former grants manager, Ke'ala Newman, came up with the inoa. And so, we decided to keep that. And that's something that I also want to share with the board, is that this program was initially designed by the former grants manager, Ke'ala, some of our staff members, Carla Hostetter, our R&E director. So they all contributed to the start of the redesign of this program. And so Ho'akuakua is what brings both programs together. And again, it is to support nonprofits who are hosting an event that provides benefits to OHA and our Native Hawaiian community. Next slide, please. So the events that qualify under this program is a long list, again, because it is a consolidation of what qualified under Ahahui as well as under former sponsorship. So award and recognition events like our Native Hawaiian Chamber of Commerce OO Awards. That was something that OHA supported and attended earlier this year. Building dedications or groundbreaking ceremonies, community events free to the public, like the Makalehua Uwai Manalo that OHA also supported last December. Events that highlight ali'i. And so we have a few that we have supported just recently with Kuhio and celebrating him. Gathering of Native Hawaiian practitioners for purposes of education or perpetuating cultural practice. Events that provide services that benefit our aina and culture. Native Hawaiian conventions like the Civic Clubs, CNHA. Fundraisers or charity events like our Holoku Ball, Hale Kipa, Luna Lilo Home, and Ekolumeanui, just to name a recent few. These are events. They must be events. And one of the things that in our CLA audit that was cautioned was to ensure that we are sticking to this criteria versus awarding for programmatic services. Those are things that should occur in a different, normally that would be our community grants program. Next slide, please. So our eligibility requirements are listed here. And these are all on our website too. So everything here is also on our website. So to be eligible, organizations must be nonprofit. And so we do require an IRS letter of determination to prove that. They must complete our application. And there's a minimum amount of information that's required. Complete an authorized signatory form, submit a W-9 so that we're able to pay you. CVC to check for HCE compliance. They must comply with our HRS 1017 requirements. And we did set the max budget at $15K because that was pretty much the average and what was consistent in this last year of awarding. Real quick to note, so organizations can only apply for one event grant in each fiscal year. And I don't know if it's noted here, but if they are a community grant recipient, they still can apply for this event grant or event sponsorship. Next slide, please. Okay, so HRS 1017, so that's the Hawaii Revised Statute, and that's actually what gives OHA its granting authority. And so this is what informs our eligibility requirements from the last page. So 1017A, application for grants shall be submitted, and 1017A further lists like some of the minimum information required. I didn't list it here, but it's all captured in our application right now. 1017B, so there's 5 provisions in this HRS. So B is that, they comply with relevant federal, state, and county laws. Also that these grants cannot be used for entertainment or perks. And, you can see the others hold us harmless and indemnifies OHA, and they adhere to the law. Okay. Next, so we use 1017C1B, which is where we require that these be nonprofit organizations. And then if they are a nonprofit, they should have a governing board whose members have no material conflict of interest with the board. And this is also information that we request in our application, like tell us who your governing board members are. 1017D is that we should monitor or evaluate the event. And then last is that basically we can do this regardless of the 103D, which is a procurement code, and 103F, which is purchases of health and human services. So that gives us some flexibility. Next slide, please. So in addition to eligibility requirements, this is our evaluation criteria. And this is, I think, the critical part to note, because this is how we evaluate and score all these applications that are coming through. And how organizations do here is basically what, if they've met all the eligibility requirements, this is what we're going to go to next. And based on that information that's provided in the application, like this is where the determination is made. And it's based on the criteria here. So we have event scope of work, as you can see. Thank you. Sorry, getting over a cold too. Alignment to our strategic plan and budget, and then, what's the benefit for OHA? So the eval, it's a 50-point eval. For the first, what is that? 6 criteria, it's a 0 to 5 scale. And then for the last 2, it's a 0 to 10 scale. Next, please. Oh, yeah. Well, but each question is worth 5. Yeah. I mean, each line is worth 5. So all of that information above, except for the detailed 1017 requirements, are also on our website. And so this is just, tiny print. So I don't expect you guys to be able to read it all. I'm going to go through each of the components of our process, but this is kind of an overview of our SOP. So we have like 8 steps we've kind of broken this process into. I'm going to say it's not a perfect process. We are constantly, making tweaks and improvements and learning new things. But I think we feel confident in that, we've built something that meets, our HRS 1017 requirements, that addresses or is addressing some of the things that were called out in OHA's last audit, and something that we can stand behind. So 8 steps. First is intake, eligibility review, evaluation, award recommendation, action item submission and decision communication. Then there's ratification and processing, coordination with event POCs, and then our post-event report. Next slide, please. So intake is where the process begins. I was asked about tracking referrals. So 1, we don't ask the orgs if anyone has referred them, and it isn't something that we track. And frankly, we don't have the capacity to do that. I forgot to mention who the team is. So the team at this time, given our lack of staffing in the grants department, after Keala left, it's been myself and my executive assistant, Loa Clayton, whom I share with Hailama. And we have a temp admin assistant, Micah Kahiva. So we pretty much manage the process. But intake doesn't, for us, however you came to Ho'akuakua'lahui, really what we start to look at you as soon as we receive all of your documents. So that's the application and then all of your required docs. So our app is received through the online portal. It's timestamped. All the required documents are received via email, and it's only considered complete when everything's been received. We do follow up on missing docs, but anyway, once all of that is received, we'll create a folder. So again, just reiterating, this is for us where the process begins. We have had inquiries, some emails being forwarded, and what I'm doing is just drive to the website, send everybody to the website. So even for those who maybe in the past have submitted letters and packets, we're still driving to the website to, everybody gotta apply. Okay. So through this, I'm gonna also talk about areas of improvement. So right now, our system doesn't allow for people to just upload the docs with their application. That's, humbug, I will say, but that's something that we definitely would like to work on, creating more ease of use for those applying. And then the follow-up, that requires time. And we're very short-staffed, but we are doing it and reaching out to say, hey, you're missing this document, or we need this. But I think that's an area that we want to work on. Any questions? Okay.
I have a few questions, but I think you touched upon one of my questions, is if we have an entity that reaches out to us, then we refer them to the website to fill out the form and so forth, or do you want us to forward you if they email us or something?
You can, and we can even give you, honestly, like, it would be great to just, if you folks drive them to the website and say, hey, we have, a new
I did in the
program.
meanwhile.
Huh?
I had forwarded
You
them
have.
the link.
Yeah.
And I was very pleased to see on the website that you have listed, if your event is from this date or this month to this month, that please apply within this time frame. So I think that's pretty efficient with that update that you folks have made. But in trying to figure it out myself, when I clicked on the form, there's different pages, so you have to fill out that first page to get so far. So I didn't know for an applicant what that looks like for them.
Yeah.
So I was curious as to what the process is.
So, I don't have a copy of the full application for you folks, but that's something so what we're gonna do is upload on the website a PDF of the whole app, so that for me going in, before I go in and start the process, I can see what
That's
all
what I
the
was thinking. If you
questions.
can have it all in the
Yeah,
forefront so people know what to expect and how long it might take them to fill it
yeah.
out.
And it is, yeah. But, yeah, so that is something that we're gonna move on, is put it up, because we got a few asked, like, hey, can I see what the whole thing is before I start my app? So we're gonna upload that to the website so they can see it.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. And we do, like, if you folks can drive them to the website, great. If not, if you forward it to us, we'll do it. And then mahalo for complimenting what's there, but there's still more that we need to do to, make it a better process for ourselves as well as for our users.
So if, for instance, if I was asked by an entity or individual about the time frame, how long it takes for somebody to get back to them, I would imagine the priority is based on those events that are closer in time, but how long
Yeah.
can they expect to get like a reach?
So that's
Reach
one of the things that we want to put on the website so people know how long it's going to be. So we have people who are already submitting for next year, fiscal year, Q1 and Q2. But we're not gonna look at those applications until after the deadline. And the reason is, we're gonna look at all of the applications received for that period at the same time. And what it does is it provides a fair advantage, like a fair advantage, everybody to compete in a fair environment. Okay, I took that language straight from one of our audits, but I love that language because it does, right? So in this case, the early bird doesn't get an advantage. We're gonna hold on your app until the period for application is done and look at everybody at the same time, because you're all competing for the same bucket of money. That being said, we can say that now on our website. It's not there. In fact, we just met the other day and he said, okay, like, let's get that up there so people know going in, like, even though I'm putting my application in now, I'm not gonna hear anything, like, it's not gonna be evaluated until this month. And then any decisions will be this month. So we do have a timeline in the back. We just haven't made it, public and visible, but we want to do that because I think that's gonna help for us ourselves too in managing communication.
Mhm. And in terms of building out your team, what's your guys' process in building that back? Because I think how we all see it is the grants department is one of the biggest kuleana that OHA is participating with for and within the community. So if we're
Yeah.
gutted out, I'm concerned what the strain is for your team, your current team. I mean, I see on social media that we're posting things, but is
So there's some, I think some, well, so we have been like, even before Lisa, our new director came on, like I even did some interviews, like the pool is not a pool, it's like a puddle. So it's been hard to recruit and to find qualified applicants and even looking beyond what's considered applicants who meet the MQs, because I've done that too and said, hey, can I see everybody who's applied, whether they met the MQs or not? So it is a challenge trying to get grant officers on.
yeah.
I know administration is working on some strategies with HR and I believe chair and the board to like do some innovative things to try and get people into the
Yeah.
Office of Hawaiian Affairs. In one of our divisions, we did see like an uptick in applications. And we want to kind of attribute that unfortunately to what's happening at the federal level.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Based on staff who are also assisting.
oh yeah. Well, so on the grant side, we do have, we've asked, so some of our other staff have taken on extra kuleana to help us. So on the grant side, we do have a backlog, right? We're trying to contract and get out all the contracts for the fiscal year 24 community grants that were awarded, and some of them trickled into fiscal year 25. Yeah, like I think we had the partial awards, then we said, okay, we're gonna give them the whole award. So we have, let me see, two staff from R&E and then one from SNI who have agreed to take on. Oh yeah, Elena, so four. So even our senior director has agreed to kako'o on the grant side. On this side, sponsorships, I did do a presentation 2 weeks ago to all of your staff, trustee aides, and, hoping that we can work together and collaborate and maybe get some support on the sponsorship side, as well. And I think it's, some of the things we're thinking, it's good opportunity to increase engagement with some of these, um, event point of contacts and build pilina with them. So that's something that we're also working on. But ultimately, when we build out our teams, this is a process that would move back to grants.
Mhm. So it'd be all together.
Yeah, so grants and like it would all be together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I call this my side gig because, we want to keep it going, but it would be way too strenuous to put it on our grants team at this time.
Yeah.
And I also like our new director, so, I want to keep her on. So I don't want to be like, here, take this right now. Yeah, so we want to get caught up on grants, hire more people, and then eventually this would transition back.
I think I mentioned it before, but I think if we look at the list of those that plan to attend or attended the grant workshops, that might be another way that to reach out, say, hey, is there anybody that you know that might be qualified or interested in working with us?
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Thank you.
Hello, trustee Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. I have an unusual problem. The board decided so many years ago, and it's in the minutes of those meetings, that there is a group of legacy sponsorships. I'll just use an example without mentioning names. One of those legacy entity would never ask us for money. they're so humble. But the board wanted to give that money to that entity. Well, I'm trying to figure out how we can go through this process to comply with what we agreed on so many years ago. And I'm asking our administration, and I've had conversations with Stacy about this problem, and how do we get a check cut for this entity that the board approved, and without having the head of that entity signing all these papers and submitting the documents. They're not even asking for the money, but the board decided they wanted to give that money to that entity because it's a key entity in Hawaii. No question about it. So I'm thinking, how can we get past this process to comply with the board's approval so many years ago?
So I don't, it wouldn't be then through sponsorships, because I understand compliance with the board decision, but as an organization, we also have to comply with HRS 1017, which empowers us to be able to grant. However, it is within the scope of the requirements of 1017. So I don't have an answer. Like, I guess I would say this wouldn't be the vehicle, and I don't know what the power of the organization is to do something like that. Like, basically, this is not it.
I think we need
it
to
wouldn't be a
ask,
sponsorship.
we need to ask legal counsel to see if there's a way. My next question is, what did we do about FESPAC? How many papers did they sign for the $3 million? Oh, yeah, the 1 point. Yeah, so sorry. I wanted to give them more money. No, I just make that comparison. So no, I want to be transparent, but because we did approve it, and we have the minutes to prove it. And who said they had to come back every year? The board didn't say they had to come back every year. Our administration said they had to come back every year.
Yeah, well, it's an, so, I just want to remind the board of the CLA audit, and sponsorships, grants was a huge ding on the organization. Because of the audit finding, CEO no longer has sponsorships. Individual trustees no longer have sponsorships. And the process was made to, all sponsorships must come to the board. And the trustee protocol allowance was then created to have a release valve for expenses that would allow trustees to have community meetings, provide lay to community members, things like that. In addition to the audit and the organization being responsive to that, to make sure that we're in compliance, and fiduciarily we are meeting our requirements. I just want to remind us that we're talking about over $500,000 in sponsorships. It's a lot of money. And so we want to ensure, even if it's a $2,000 or a $25,000 and anywhere in that range, that we do have the paperwork. And to answer Chair Emeritus' question on previous, the fact that we did not do it previous does not excuse us from doing it properly going forward and currently. And so this is the fidelity and the discipline that we as an organization need to have. We need to demand that, because all of you are at risk if we don't. And then I'm going to turn it over to Everett, because he's going to talk about the budgeting of these legacies.
Yes, thank you, Kapana, and good morning, trustees. So the legacy sponsorships were a specific carve out, so to speak, under the action item that removed the CEO's grant authority, and that as well, and also suspended the trustee sponsorship activity. I think that was 18. Sorry. I'm sorry, I don't have the action item off the top of my head at this time. And those legacy sponsorships were subsequently approved through budgetary approvals as line items in past biennium budgets. I think what we're looking at now is a process by which even those legacy sponsorships would be subject to a standardized process, given the questions around, the inclusion of those legacy sponsorship events as, line items within our budget, and providing that they would also go through the same process as the other events that might not have had the opportunity to make themselves to make those events onto those prior legacy sponsorship lists. As to Chair Emerita's question about FestPac event, that was handled, well, first, that was a funding that was approved by this board, an amount, decided at the time. And then that was also supported as a payment to DBED, a government agency, which a payment to which is not subject to the state procurement code. It's actually one of the categories of disbursements that are not subject to a HRS 103D state procurement code process. So we can make those types of payment to another government agency, and that was, what FestPac was clearly, was heavily tied to state agency activity.
Trustee Waheing?
Thank you. Like there are different kinds of sponsorships that have different, like goals. I guess, like like some sponsorships where we're sponsoring something to help this organization, but there are other ones that, maybe we're helping them, but at the same time, we're benefiting from it. In other words, if we're sponsoring something and we're running ads during their program, and we know like a lot of beneficiaries, that's going to be a program that are going to be largely our beneficiaries, and we can reach them. We know that our ads are going to reach them, or we sponsor like an award that's going to be seen by them, and it promotes Hawaiian language or something. There is a benefit to us doing it, that we're not just simply sponsoring them, we're getting something out of it. Do you guys consider things like that when you sponsor things, or are we just having them
So it is, it's part of the criteria and our scoring rubric. It's the last piece on, within the criteria, and that's it, that is that benefit. And that and the budget utilization, those are worth 10 points in the, so everything is a 0 to 5 point scale except for that specific thing that you've called out, and budget. So those are like, organizations can be awarded up to 10 points for those areas. So it is considered, along with
Like,
alignment and.
like people who buy ads during the Super Bowl, they're not doing it to help the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're doing it for their own benefit, right? I think there are programs like that would, that we should take into consideration.
So we do that as well. We do, so our communications also buys ads, right? As, for some big events like Kamehameha School Song Contest, Eddie Aikau Foundation, Merry Monarch Festival. So there is that vehicle for support where we are buying ads. And so we'll see, OHA commercials, and then, and so that's one way in which we're supporting, but it is transactional, right? And then there is this other avenue to support events.
And I just want to add on to what Kehal just explained. Many times when we do these media buys for these specialized programs, it's actually done concurrently with a sponsorship. It's most often done simultaneously. So the organization is getting, you know, yeah, it's from the media buy, but then there's also the sponsorship too. Well,
Sorry, Madam Chair, one question. Trustee Hulu's question. Trustee, are you asking if they, right now, we currently make them reapply even though it is a legacy grant? And there's no process to just have it be continuous every year because the board already decided to. But it comes to the board though, because we approved this grant, even though it's a legacy, it came to the board in the past. There's $25,000 towards, is that what we're, who are we talking about, by the way? Just to clarify for the record, we don't need to say. Okay, well, anyway, this grant, I have a good idea of who we're talking about. Did come to the board, right, as a legacy?
Yes.
And we do have to approve it.
So it came through budget, was it budget realignment or biennium budget 2317? So it did come before the board, however, not, with the 1017 requirements.
Okay, I got it.
It came as a budget request along with the entire rest of OHA's operational budget requests.
Got it. So what we're currently saying is there's no process for the legacy grants. As far as not having to reapply. Everyone has to reapply for the grant, no matter if it's legacy or non-legacy, to comply with 1017. Is that what we're saying? Basically, to answer your question.
If it's a sponsorship, yes. And
Sponsorship.
for some organizations,
Yeah.
this can be the first time because they maybe in the past have provided a letter and a packet.
Right, right.
But as I've said in our CLA audit, one of the findings was that we lacked sufficient documentation through an application or even through the formal letters that were provided. So at this time with OHA being brand new, yes, we're asking everybody to apply.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be held to the same process.
Yeah.
Now we have talked about like how do we create ease of use when it is an annual ask. So my example is TurboTax, where every year I go on and all I gotta do is update the outdated information. So we've talked about doing that, where if the same org is gonna come back next year and everything's the same, not everything will be the same, right? Because the date gonna be different, the year, maybe the governing board members change. But what we wanna do, again, another improvement would be to just like check the box if everything the same. If it's not the same, change what you gotta change. But personally for myself, like I want to be in compliance with 1017. I don't want us to be in this audit again. Like I want to make sure that we are addressing the issues that were called out in the audit, that we're in compliance. And so, we're doing our best to do that while keeping our constituents in
Yeah.
mind.
So we're asking everyone to comply so that we can comply, so we can continue to give you money, right? Simple, simple. Thank you. Mahalo, Madam Chair.
Trustee Alateria?
Mahalo, Madam Chair. And I'm not quite sure what we're talking about, but so it's kind of nebulous to me, which is okay because it gives me a clear canvas to work off of. Would it be possible if the legacy recipient comports with existing programming within internally, would it make sense for us to create it as a budget line item where it can be included in existing programming within the internal? Yes, no, what, is that too creative?
The budget is already set, right? And so all we're asking for, and I want to just share that the other legacies sponsors or awardees have complied and have filled out the application. So we're talking about a one-off here. We're not talking about, all legacies are not wanting to fill out the application. And to Kehal's point, we just need that first one, right? Because we need the information from that first application and we can roll it over, but we don't even have the first one. And And the first one has that acknowledgement form. It's the last page that the grantee signs off, that they received the money and that they agree to the terms in the law. If they don't sign off, then we have nothing that covers the organization on giving this money. Well, how the money was spent, who it's going to, how much, and that the organization is saying that they are going to comply with the terms of the money being given to them. We just needed that first time, and we can roll over and then just update the date, maybe the year, to just make it easy
For
And-
everybody.
for everybody.
For all.
Well, I don't think that this entity has been approached appropriately by OHA,
Mhm.
you know, and I would be willing to talk with the leader of that organization to explain to her our
Mahalo.
responsibility,
Mahalo.
you know,
Mhm.
and if she can accept it one time, then maybe, like you said, we can roll it over.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that would be, and it would keep us in compliance. And so every year we would change dates and they just sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Go
Chair
ahead,
Emeritus.
Go ahead, trustee Akaka.
Yeah, I have a question regarding, with legacy, sponsorships. Is it where there is a clear understanding of what happens in terms of the give and take on our participation and their sponsorship?
My understanding is that the list that was put together by our former CEO was really, really close Hawaiian organizations that it's so important that we support, and that's including Mauna Ala, Iolani Palace, you know, CNHA, Keiki Hula, Mary Monarch. That's the kind of organizations that they wanted to make sure that we support, and that's where the legacy list came from. Sylvia presented it to the board, and the board approved it.
There are 24 legacy.
Right, and we can look at it again if the board desires to look at it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, nothing is forever, so if there's questions about some of the entities, you know, we can look at it and have the discussion.
You could just approach whomever you're speaking about to see what they would like to do. I mean, that'd be, because you wanted to open up a conversation, right? Again,
Yes.
revisit a conversation.
Well, they want to call it a donation and not a request for
Oh.
sponsorship.
Oh, I
Because-
see.
Yeah, you
Okay,
know.
I see. Big difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, if they, if an entity or entities are reluctant recipients, we need to look at that as to why and work that out. Because if they really are not interested in receiving the sponsorship, that's what it is.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, this is a sponsorship. This is not a donation program. Like 1017 doesn't empower the organization to donate. It has all of these requirements attached to it. So it wouldn't be a donation. So I would take this offline, but what I would say is like, is there another pathway to achieve, what you are seeking, but outside of the bucket of sponsorship and granting? Because
Yeah.
like, it's not a grant, it's not a sponsorship.
Yes.
And again, there is this, right, we have all the criteria, there is this benefit, right, opportunity for OHA engagement, PR. So if it's, if it is that, if OHA wants to donate that, I don't know what is within the kind of the organization, but I would say like, then what is the pathway to do that? But I don't know if this is the place to explore that, but I would just say like maybe taking that offline and figuring out like, is there another way? And outside of this, again,
Yeah.
bucket of sponsorships.
Because I
and
think when
1017.
it's televised or there's printed materials, it doesn't say donated by, it's like probably sponsored by this entity, that entity, and so forth. So it's not a donation, but I think what we might be running into here is that if an entity or entities don't want to participate with us or even include us, then why are we sponsoring them if it is a burden for them or whatever? Or is it where they feel that, oh, we will do this amount whether we say that to you up front or not? And so there might be confusion along the way in terms of what the kuleana is on both sides and what we can expect, because I think when it comes to all the named legacy sponsorships, these are very notable, great parts of our culture and something to be perpetuated. And at the same time, how do we fit into that? You know, how does that benefit our beneficiaries? You know, looking at it from that standpoint. Thank you.
Trustee Souza?
Madam Chair, I really want to say the name of the organization, but I don't, but I'll give a hint. I participate in their events almost every year for the last 20-something years. But I also want to remind everybody, and I love them dearly, also want to remind everybody, we're not the sole source of funding for this event, right? So these guys also have to go out and get monies elsewhere where there is an application process annually, right? Or when the grants period is open, right? And so I know some of us is old school, we like fill out the paperwork, and that leads to a lot of, it's not even on the agenda, but I'm gonna say DHL issues where people receive paperwork, right? And they cannot fill it out, don't know how to fill it out. So then, getting back to Clay's point earlier, we can help them along, right? And that's what we're doing now. We're helping the process, but we're being consistent across the board. And we wanna make sure everyone on here knows, and in the future, when the grantees show up, right? They understand the process, and we're being consistent. Then nobody can question us at the end of the day. That's all we're asking for, that initial application, and we roll it over, and now there's a process. And so I think very, very simple. And I think the amount of money we give this organization, even though they are perpetuating the culture, doing a great job in language, and that's what I'm going to say. I'm not going to say the other parts that they support because they give away the name. But all I want to say is that as a board, getting back to somebody's point earlier as well, we need to be reviewing who these legacy sponsorships is, all 24, because the previous board agreed to those. And we may have a different direction that we want to go in, right? And so that's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Questions?
Maybe we can agendize it in the near future in terms of looking at what the kuleana is entailed, and that the different legacy sponsorships have the enough time for them to review, and if they can present on their end as to why the relationship works for them and why it's good for both sides. Thank you
So much. I know we have a lot more to go, so let's continue on and allow her to finish up the rest of the steps. And if you can try to retain your questions towards the end so we can let her finish, and then we can get our testifier on.
I'll try and get through the rest of it quickly. So in our 8-step process, like I said, first step is intake. And again, that begins once all materials and application is received. Step 2 is just the eligibility review. So we're looking at the application, reviewing it against the qualified event criteria, making sure we got all the documents we need, and looking at the budget request for disallowed items. So as you guys saw in HRS 1017-B, no entertainment or perks. So that can't be included in budget. This is an area of improvement. Right now, we don't have a list of those disallowed costs, like specifics. It just says entertainment and perks, and we're still seeing those things in the budget request, so we take it out. But again, like I said, we're continuous improvement. And so we're gonna publish a list of disallowed costs and have that on the website so people know ahead of time before they put their request in. And so we'll take a look at that and take out what is not eligible. And so I think, like, a few meetings ago, the agenda said, we're going to award $10,000. And then when we came on the day of meeting, it was adjusted to 9. And that was because in going back and reviewing the budget again, we saw like, oh, there's perks in here. Check with council. He's like, yeah, no, that's not allowed. Okay, so we took it out. So again, this is an area we're going to get better at, but we look at it. If there's certain costs associated with these two things, we'll take it out. And then we have, total eligible budget for sponsorship. Next slide, please. So next slide is evaluation. And so right now it's our OHA staff who are the evaluators. They are all up to date on ethics training. You know, we do ask that they recuse themselves if there is a conflict of interest. And it's staff who are familiar with Mana'i Mauliola, because that whole middle section, you know, as part of our criteria is reviewing for alignment. And so a lot of them are our strategy and implementation staff. But they have a rubric. This rubric was put together for us by R&E, and they use that rubric to evaluate the application. They put in their score, and then they total their score. And then what we had to do was create tiered scoring. Why? Because we get, you know, because the ask will outweigh the available budget. And so we've done this like 3 tiers of scoring. So anybody who scores a 45 plus, they're recommended, they would be recommended at 100% of their requests. You know, next tier is 40 to 44 would be 75% of the requests. 35 to 39 would be half of that request. And anything 34 or lower is not recommended. And that's, you know, like a D, that's like a D. So they will add up their scores. You know, this is the tiers, and I will, you know, be very open. Like, it wasn't until we had our first large round that we realized, like, oh my gosh, we got to do the tiering. And this is kind of, you know, similar to what happened with community grants back in October when I first came on. So we have these tiers. They'll submit their scores and their overall recommendation back to staff. Next slide, please. And again, this is just a reminder of the criteria. So there at the top is the event scope. At the middle is that alignment to Mana'i Mauliola, right? Like, we want to make sure, hey, this thing matches with what OHA is trying to achieve, what we stand for, what our mission is about. And then the last 2 pieces, you know, Trustee Waihe, the last is that opportunity for OHA public recognition. You know, the more they get, the higher their score is going to be. But that's a 0 to 10, and then as well as their budget. Next slide, please. So step 4 is award recommendation. And so ideally what happens is when we get all these applications in, we're going to have enough budget to fund all the ones that made it, that were a 35 plus. And if that happens, like, yay, our job is, you know, like, again, they've met eligibility. Our evaluators have looked at these applications. They've scored it against our criteria, with the rubric, and we have enough budget. And so then we would take that and finalize those recommendations, and we want to bring it in the form of a summary to BF chair. You know, there's been a request for additional information. So what we want to do, so, you know, when we meet with her biweekly on Mondays, is have the report or summary that includes all the applications that were received for that round. You know, which ones were denied, like maybe they didn't qualify, whatever. We want to have that information, which ones were evaluated, and then our recommendations, you know, along with the scores and the evaluators. We have no problem disclosing that internally to chair, to the board. So that's, you know, that would be the next step. Where we would run into some challenges is if the recommendations exceed the total budget available. And so if that happens, we're going to have to huddle, like bring the evaluator team together and make some decisions and look at, it hasn't happened yet, I dread, but what we would have to do is really look at equity across Mokupuni, like, you know, with all these approved sponsorships, you know, or recommendations. Do we have equity? Like, is the Pai'aina represented well? You know, we got people from across the Pai'aina. Is our pathways represented well? You know, education, housing, health, economic, thank you. So is that, you know, recommended well? And then also our tiers. You know, we might have like the first 5 might take the whole budget if they were all high scorers, and, you know, they're all being recommended at their budget. So what we want to make sure is we're also, you know, we have equity across
the different tiers, those who are being recommended at full, 75 and 50. As I said, we haven't yet come across that problem. Guarantee going to happen when we get to fiscal year 26. But that would be what we would need to do when recommendations exceed available budget. Next slide, please. So action item submission and decision. So, again, we would bring the summary to chair. I know that there's a desire for others to see that, and, we would consult with legal on how others can see, like, I like see everybody who went apply, or like, what happened to this organization? Again, internally, we don't have any issues with sharing that information. But so if all good, after our meeting with BF Chair, we would need to draft and submit our agenda language by the deadline, our action items for review and approval. And then what we do right now is we go ahead and create PRs in Oracle, but we don't approve. And that's just so that we can try and get these checks out on time. And then there's communication that needs to happen to our sponsorship applicants. Like, hey, you're being recommended for approval, please come to the meeting. Or, unfortunately, you were not recommended. So this is, one point of communication that needs to happen with the organizations. But it is also an area that we need to work on. So we've developed some communication templates with, the different situations, as Michael likes to call it, to be able to communicate status, basically, to these orgs. Next slide, please. So if all good, we bring the action item before the BF committee. And then if approved, it'll go to full BOT for ratification. At that point is when we'll approve the PR because it's been ratified. And then there's the creating of the PO, invoicing for payment. There is a formal notification letter. We would like to get to a place where we can time the letter and the payment to go out together. But I will admit we're not necessarily there yet. Sometimes the letter comes after, or sometimes the payment is later, and then remit. Next slide, please. I'm almost done. I'm so sorry, Mona. And so step 7 is the coordination with the event POC. And so this is where we would coordinate with them on the event details. Again, another area of improvement. So a few things. One, logo and advertising, right? So these are the benefits. So definitely, working with comms, having an OHA rep to be the person that is coordinating that, but making sure we get what's needed by the org to them. Sometimes they'll include our ad if that was a named benefit. So they'll include that in their program. Also coordinating for event attendance, trustee attendance, speaking even. And we're seeing an increase, like especially this last round, a lot of the, more rural community organizations, they want the trustees to come. They want them to come and be there. They want OHA presence. So, we work on coordination on that as well. But again, I admit this is an area that we need to work on. And then last is community booth or table requests. And so this would be normally our community engagement team is the one that would go out. But it is a small team. We finally got somebody on Molokai. We have 2 BSAs here on Oahu, which is where we have, a lot of events. But ideally, we're showing up and we're there and we have presence. So these are, again, some of that coordination with the organizations. And I think I said like 3 times already, we got to get better at this part. And then our last step is the next slide, please, is a post-event report. And mahalo to our pohana who put a report together for us. So it is called out in HRS 1017, where, monitoring or evaluation of an event. I think that's 1017D. So that is something that we need to work on. So we have a report. Yeah, and this is where we're hoping we can, work with some BOT staff to help us own the event and, you know, be that point person for these organizations. And it was also called in the CLA audit, like our lack of reporting on sponsorships in the past. This is the last slide, which I hope not going to be controversial because we just talked about legacies. But under Ho'akuakoa, like the intent has been to do away with legacies and everybody falls under Ho'akuakoa. It sounds like we might have some conversation about that and follow up. Right now, also the max request is at 15K. So I wanted to share that. For fiscal year 26, this is where we really want to get into the intent of Ho'akuakoa, which is to batch the applications by quarters. So I just shared these deadlines, and as I shared earlier, like reviewing all of them together after the deadline gives everybody, basically you all get a fair shot at the funds, because everybody who made that deadline, we're going to look at all of you at the same time. Yeah, and there was one question that came up, and it was about when a sponsorship level exceeds what the budget request is. And so I did talk a little bit with Everett about that before we rolled out, because we did see that. Like, so maybe the max sponsorship was 10K, but then they asked for 15K. However, in their budget request, they do have to provide a breakdown of what that 15K is for, and that is our max. So they are able to ask for that, and then we would still see what the benefits are for that 15K ask at the at the bottom.
Trustee Akaka?
Is that listed on our website where it's clear for the applicants to see what the max or lowest amount would be?
It is, so it does say our max, like the max request is 15K and there's no minimum request. So they could come in and ask for $500 or 15. I think the lowest we've seen was maybe like 15 or something.
$15?
1,500,
Oh.
sorry, 1,500, yeah.
So
I think
if-
that was a Molokai event.
So if legacy sponsorships are no longer with Ho'akuakoa, where is it located? Or we're just gonna do away with it?
It would just have to come under Ho'akuakoa, so they would be, basically they'd be treated like everybody else who's applying. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, like it's, how do I say this tactfully? Like there aren't preferred organizations, I guess. Everybody comes through the system, applies, you know, held to the criteria, all of that. And so which is why what I've offered to create ease of process is after the initial, if you're gonna continue to request, that you just update your information and we have everything under there. But again, yeah, you just update and sign. But this is, you know, it sounds like a point of discussion for the board.
Uh, have you found it where those that it's a lot for them with their smaller organization to apply this each year and so forth, where I believe some were asking previously if they can have it where, I don't want to say it's rolled over, but it's not so rigorous for them. Is that part of the updating? Because some would ask for like 3 years at a time or so forth.
I haven't encountered that yet. We have had people like express the challenges of Ahahui, right? And how rigorous a process that was, because it was like you were applying for a community grant. And then you
Maybe
folks
that's
saw
what it was. Okay.
like 10K was the max that you would get for, and you know, I've heard somebody say, "Gal, like, how do all that work?" Like, you know,
Mhm.
I get one federal grant that doesn't require that much. So, and then we had sponsorships, which was it was not a difficult process. And I will mention that a lot of our legacies did, you know, CNHA did apply using the application process, not this new Ho'akuakoa, but they did, you know, Iolani Palace. So they've all done, you know, the former app process. But So I want to say yes before, and it might seem kind of rigorous now still, but I want to say it's right there in the middle. It's not so simple, or like I would say one wasn't rigorous, one was. And so what we've done is make sure we have the information we need to be in compliance, and we've kind of found a middle ground, hopefully. We did have, I would say, one org that has said, this is too much. But I don't know that what we would cut out, because I think all the info we're asking for is important and some of it is required.
Oh, one more question too. Do we have, with this Oracle program, is it where if you apply, you have an automatically generated response to say, we have received your application?
No, we don't have that. I don't know if when they apply on the website, does it generate an automatic email? It does,
Okay.
but technically the app's still not complete
Mhm.
until they send their docs. And that's the junk thing right now is, I'm sorry, it's not a professional word, but that's makes it a little bit humbug is I can't do everything in the application portal right now. I gotta put in my app, but then I gotta turn around and email you my IRS letter, my W-9 and all of that. So I did tell Stacy we'd like to get to a place where we have a more sophisticated system where they can do everything right there.
Is there like a tutorial online that we have, like a video recorded that they can watch in their own free time so that they would know this is what you do and then this is the process, so they feel more comfortable with it and they can watch it on their own free will and time?
We don't, but I think that's a great idea. And I'm just laughing because it might cut down on the questions
Well,
that
I'm
we
just
get
thinking,
to,
how can
so.
we make it where it's more efficient,
Yeah.
where it's more less, like it's hands-on, but less for you folks to have to.
Respond to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea. I think we could work with comms.
Yeah. Thank you.
We'll definitely, I think we'll work on that. Maybe Mike or Loa, it can be the faces on there, yeah.
Any other questions? Trustee Lindsay?
I just want to comment that, or just to give not that you folks know better, but give our administration a heads up that there are a lot of groups that are creating nonprofits and just to apply for different grants and sponsorships. So we need to look at these groups carefully, not just because they are a nonprofit that they would in fact qualify. And we had a recent grant that we gave out last month that was in question. So I'd like to think that that won't happen again. I don't know what's the status of it, but yeah, people can create nonprofits just to get grants. So I think we have to be maka'ala and look for that. That's all.
Thank you. And so again, we do have the right eligibility requirements and collect the information we do, and including them having to provide compliance, certificate of vendor compliance. And then I would like to mention, so when we do have our action items go out for review, Everett does a check with all the organizations and he checks with DCCA, so Department of Consumer and Commerce and Consumer. Yeah, so he does a quick check of the organizations when it's at action item stage.
Anything else, trustees?
Go ahead.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to bring on our testifier, Pohai.
We have Jermaine Myers.
Okay, yes, Jermaine? Are you
Aloha,
there?
Chair.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Mahalo. Aloha, my name is Jermaine Myers. I'm an OHA beneficiary for beneficiary advocacy and empowerment. I'm also a Nanakuli Hawaiian homestead lessee. My apologies. The presentation slides just shared during this agenda were not included in today's meeting packet folder. First, may I formally request via UIPA a complete copy of today's PowerPoint presentation, as well as a complete copy of the formal written policies and procedures for OHA's Koa Lahui Event Sponsorship Program Guidelines and Procedures, the same PNP that would be provided to the state auditor. Forgive me as I try to assimilate the information shared during the presentation so that I can properly give my testimony of data, views, and arguments on each agenda item as provided in Sunshine Law. It was difficult to see that after 40 years of OHA's existence, the grant department process is not a compilation of improvements done each year and by each administration. I noted that step 1 intake returns to an archaic system without online uploading. I attended an Ahahui grant orientation in 2019. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the presentation, but the intake was changed from online portal to email to Kehao and her team. Is that correct? Step 3, Kapuhana Sylvia Hasti went through a process over several years of building a grant evaluation of outside community members, not just OHA staff. What happened to those people in that list? And what happened to solicitation of outside grant evaluators? Step 7, coordination with event PLCS. For OHA opportunities to participate at the event, I didn't see a policy on how that will. Example, if the event sponsorship includes 18 tickets to attend the event that charge the public $500 each ticket, what is the policy as to how it's determined who at OHA will go to fill the 18 tickets without violating ethics commission, gift law, and fair treatment rule, etc. I didn't notice any slide reporting back to OHA how the monies were spent, how payment receipts are solicited and provided proof of receipts, and if OHA is requiring the event organizer to return monies not spent because payment receipts were not submitted to OHA in the event report back to OHA. I'm still trying to understand about event reporting that's due to OHA, and I didn't see that on the policy as far as a requirement. Agenda 4, that's it. I look forward to the next agenda item to provide my testimony. Kel Kuapu, God bless all of you.
Thank you, Jermaine. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. It's something we definitely have to work on. But at this time, we'd like to move on to item B. This is, we have a presentation for item B, and we're going to review number 1, overview of budget planning process and timeline. Number 2, overview of categories of expenditures in individual trustee office budgets, Board of Trustees budget and budget planning documents. Number 3, planning and execution of new or modified OHA projects, consideration of strategic alignment and implications for OHA programs, and planning in the FY 26-27 budget. At this time, I'd like to call upon our CFO, Ramona Hink, who will provide the presentation for item B.
Aloha Chair Alapa, Vice Chair Waihe, trustees and colleagues. Next to me is Grace Chen, the Financial and Reporting Analyst. She's here to assist me if your questions get really hard. She created the budget templates that are very comprehensive and may look formidable, but they're actually pretty straightforward. So I will go through it with you in this presentation. Okay, next slide. No, the one before. Called the biennial budget? Yes.
Slide 2. She's showing you the picture of what this slide looks like.
No. No.
Okay, got it.
Okay, the development of OHA's biennial budget begins with the strategic plan. And from this, the implementation plan and tactics are created to guide the operational activities and projects. The biennial budget is a financial expression of OHA's plans to implement the strategic plan and includes aligned spending priorities and contributing funding sources. The OHA's budget is constrained by our current spending limit policy, which administration will be bringing a revision recommendation to the April 16th BF meeting and to the BOT meeting for the first and second reading on May 1st and May 15th. This is reflected in the updated presentations handed out before the meeting. Limit for OHA only. Our current spending limit is for the OHA core only, so it does not include the commercial properties and the federal grants. So the current spending limit for fiscal 26 is 47.8 million. And the estimated spending limit for fiscal 27 currently is 50.1 million. Are there any questions? Oh, did I just calculate? Yeah. So currently we're at the budget development phase. On April 4th, the BOT's budget will be combined with the administration's budget. On April 16th, the community report will be presented at the BF meeting, and any changes to the community report from that meeting will be incorporated in the final report for the community meetings the following week on April 22nd and April 23rd, and then on April 26th and May 2nd. On June 11th, an action item will be presented at the BF meeting for recommendations to the BOT on June 26th with a balanced budget that may also include revised spending limits. Next slide are the spending priorities, and I'm passing this slide to Stacy.
Mahalo, Mona. So in terms of budget preparation, when we look at our final budget, it is truly a reflection of this board's priorities, right? Where we spend our money, where we appropriate our funds, really should articulate to our beneficiaries what our priorities are. So to demonstrate how we have been structuring the budget process is we have three major priorities. The first priority is OHA being an employer of choice. So we see, as we're putting our budgets together, there are some categories that are fixed and others that are variable. Our personnel and fringe are one of those fixed costs. We have put great emphasis with Chair Kahele and this board in ensuring that we have competitive compensation. And as a result of that, we had put together the ad hoc salary working group, and they are addressing that. And we will have their figures in time for our final budget. We also know that we are anticipating the BOT salary increases to be included in this budget. And we are making a concerted effort to fill all of the vacancies as much as possible, are hard to fill vacancies that have been long-standing. And that way we can ensure that the agency is operating at its optimal performance. With that said, though, that comes with a cost. And so the board should know that when we look at the final figures, we will see an increase in our personnel and fringe, The fringe cost for a state worker is at 64%. That's a hard cost, that's a fixed cost that we cannot change. And as we also think about ensuring that we have the capacity and the capabilities within the organization, it has to have the resources to effectuate that. So we will see an increase in that line item, but that is our number one priority, is making sure that OHA is an employer of choice. The second priority is our operational processes and infrastructure. So behind the scenes, there is a lot of work that is underway to ensure that we do have modernized systems, as we just finished this conversation about an archaic way of putting in sponsorships. But there's a lot of work that's happening in our financial services, in deployments of systems to ensure timely procurement, travel, P-card payments. And then on a human resource side, Corey has been working very diligently along with some of our other senior leaders on incorporating our performance management system. He's also been working on NeoGov, which will address our recruitment and talent management challenges that we've had over the last, decade or so. And then also Elena, as our who is our PO'o over our strategy and implementation team. But more importantly, she is really ensuring that Mana'i Mauliola is being effectuated, and she will be putting together a dashboard, a system that will allow us to monitor our progress of Mana'i Mauliola, something that allows this board to ensure that we are making progress and our beneficiaries can be kept apprised of the progress that we're making as well. So that operational process and infrastructure improvements, that also cost money. So you'll see larger amounts being appropriated for those types of projects. Lastly, we are executing transformational programs and services. And, the charge from this board is we need to ensure that Mana'i Mauliola is being actualized. And so we have the team in place, and we are moving full force on that directive. And we are going to be putting forth programs and services through this budget process. And we are also working with the board suite, as different trustees have programmatic focus areas that they would like to move priorities through. And we'll be talking a little bit more in this presentation on how the trustee ideas and how the tactics that come forth through strategy and implementation get formalized into a program document that allows us to, one, have the programmatic detail that's required, so we understand what the tactic is, but we also know what the interdependencies are across the organization to make sure that we can successfully implement these programs. And then knowing how much it's going to cost us and putting those appropriations into our budget. So those are our three priorities that you'll see reflected in our appropriations. And these priorities are going to, we believe, move this organization forward and will ensure that we can accomplish the aspirational outcomes that have been set forth by this board in Mana'i Mauliola.
Next slide, please. Key constraints. The key constraints to the OHA budget is the spending limit based on our sources of funds. So specifically, the PLT annual revenues of 21.5 million, the state appropriation of 3 million, and the 5% of the rolling quarter market value average of the Native Hawaiian Trust Fund. For fiscal 26, that amount is 22.7 million. The budget is developed for existing salaries with a fringe, budgeted at a fringe load of 64.25%. Then recurring expenses such as ongoing program, expenditures, rent and CAM, and our debt service, etc. Then strategic programs and grants, and then the discretionary expenses such as travel and training. OHA also honors longstanding commitments, including our provisos for the state general fund appropriations with matching funds from OHA. And the DHHL 3 million per year agreement to pay their debt service on the revenue bond that is used for infrastructure projects on Hawaiian homelands. 16 million. I'm just kind of like, okay. The 16 million is the beneficiary and community investments. So our grants and the strategic initiatives that are estimated right now in our budget. Well, grants and contracts. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the fiscal 26 request tab that I'm sure is part of the budget file that you received. And I'll go through the request form and the travel form and the key columns that need to be filled out. So on this slide, the columns highlighted in yellow are the important budget information. The fiscal 26 budget request is the amount that you're requesting. So that's the first yellow column. The expense description should be detailed enough so that the actual expenses can be associated with the correct budget category. So for instance, MIMO 2.1 uses the Lama Kukui for a meeting and 10 parking validations at $33. Average cost times 6 meetings equals $2,000. So just enough, explanation so that chair, when he's reviewing your budgets, can discern what that line item is. The operational or project or CIP column and the project name is explained in the following slides. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide provides definitions of the expense categories and the definition of operational project CIPs that are two of the columns on the prior tab. Next slide. Okay, this slide is an example of a current project using the project form.
So on the administration side, we use this project request form and budget justification, again, to ensure that whatever tactics or initiatives are being proposed for budget approval, that there is enough information that, one, we can ensure that we have enough resources to execute on it, as well as an understanding of what the cost of the initiative is going to be, and what the anticipated timeline for delivery, because again, we want to make sure that the work can be accomplished in that fiscal year. So what we're doing with our trustees who have projects is, and so I'll just give an example. We're working with Trustee Akaka right now on the AHA Opio, and the final deliverable with all of the information, all of the conversations that we're having in terms of the program design and the total cost will end up being populated into a document like this. And this document is submitted to fiscal services, financial services, and it accompanies the budget. So if at any time, Chair, Vice Chair, our Budget and Finance Committee, Chair Kahele, or myself need to have a better, more detailed understanding of what these project initiatives are, then we have this documentation. Any questions?
Next slide, please.
Will this be available to all the trustees so that we know the status if we're interested?
Yeah, my understanding was, Chair Kahele had reached out, to the board to see if they had projects or initiatives. Is that correct? So if you are Chair Emeritus, you let me know and we will make sure that we can have staff work with you.
No, I
Oh.
don't mean me.
Oh, I
I
see.
mean, ongoing projects.
Yes.
Like if, if trustee Souza
Oh.
has one, I want to know what's going on. I can just pull it up on.
Oh,
a-
yes, yes.
Yeah, and same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I
Thank
thought you had a program you wanted. Okay, mahalo.
Okay, the travel request form needs to be completed for any travel requests. So basically, it's column G through P that needs to be inputted for your travel. Standard costs are used to calculate the budgeted dollar amount on the form. And the form has 4 sections: in-state travel for the employee, out-of-state travel for the employee, international travel for the employee, and in-state travel for someone not an employee. For example, board counsel or a Hawaiian dignitary or an expert that is needed on the trip. Next slide, please. Okay, a continuation of the travel request form. This form provides definitions of the expense accounts for the travel. By inputting your information on the previous slide, the budgeted dollar amounts for these expenses are calculated in the template. Mahalo, Grace. Are there any questions?
Trustees, any questions? All right, seeing none. All right, thank you very much, Ramona. At this time, I'd like to call upon our testifier. I believe it's Jermaine.
Aloha, Chair.
Aloha.
Is it okay to give my testimony?
Yes, please go ahead. Thank you.
Mahalo. Aloha, my name is Jermaine Myers. I'm an OHA beneficiary for beneficiary advocacy and empowerment. I'm also a Nanakuli Hawaiian homestead lessee. According to Chapter 10, Section 10-14.5, titled Budget Preparation and Submission Auditing, B, the board shall provide opportunities for beneficiaries in every county of Honolulu, Maui, Kauai, and Hawaii to participate in the preparation of each biennial and supplemental budget of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. These opportunities shall include an accounting by trustees of the funds expended and of the effectiveness of programs undertaken. I noted on the timeline that it includes community input on April 22nd, 23rd, 26th, and May 2nd. The slide doesn't include specific county that these dates and times are linked to. Virtual presentations is not giving kupuna beneficiaries that don't use computers the opportunity to provide their input. How will they have the opportunity to engage with OHA on questions and concerns about the proposed biennial budget, but also questions and concerns regarding the counting by trustees of the funds expended and of the effectiveness of programs undertaken by OHA? I also noted on the timeline slide that BOT decision-making dates are May 14th for Budget and Finance and June 26th for BOT, which I noticed that it was changed and updated in today's slide. But I'm just concerned that OHA BOT approval on June 26th is assuming that the budget will be approved as submitted, not leaving any changes at the BF committee or the BOT. I just want trustees to take into consideration if the biennial budget is not approved by June 30th, OHA staff will not be able to report to work on July 1st, and legal can correct me if I'm wrong. Under key constraints, fourth, it states OHA honors large standing committees including provisos from the state general funds appropriations with matching funds from OHA. And thank you, Mona, for clarifying. I thought that when I saw $60 million of public land trust revenues to benefit sharing community investment, that it was somehow linked to giving more money to DHHL, but mahalo for clarifying that it is indeed for OHA programs. So what I'm understanding is from the fourth, it would be $16 million for OHA community grants, etc. $3 million for the debt, so 19 million. And then the rest of the funds of the $50 million annual budget will be going towards staff salaries, benefits, but as well as operational costs. So I'm looking forward to reviewing the budget with my neighborhood board. The only other concern I have with that is that our neighborhood board usually meets on the third Tuesday, which would be April 15th. When I looked at the community input dates, it's really condensing it to April, but the first draft that's not going to be coming out to the community until April 22nd, which is after our neighborhood board meeting. And then the last community input will be May 2nd, Friday, May 2nd. So I'm just concerned that with this short timeline, how will our members of our neighborhood board and our community, which has the highest concentration of Native Hawaiians in the state, how are we going to be able to give input, solicit input from our community through our different committees, but also solicit input from our board, and then either show that we support or we oppose OHA's proposed biennium budget. So I'm just looking forward to seeing the budget and engaging with OHA. Kia kuapu. God bless all of you.
Mahalo, Jermaine. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, who said what? Hulu. Okay, Trustee Hulu moved it, seconded by Trustee Akaka. At this time, give a roll call, please. Trustee Ahuna. Trustee Akaka.
Aye.
Trustee Akina.
Aye.
Trustee Galutaria.
Aye.
Trustee Kahele.
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay. Trustee Souza.
Aye.
Vice Chair Wahehe.
Yes.
Chair Lapa. Yes. We are adjourned.